Thank you for joining us on Rhino Radio today. My name is Orr, and I am joined by Reverend David Butterworth, a minister of the Methodist Church of Britain. Thank you for joining me today, David.
My pleasure.
Happy holidays to everyone. Thank you for joining us and listening. As we've mentioned already at the beginning of our show, we are on one hand celebrating the holiday, on the other hand, being aware of the fact that it's not as joyous as it should be, or even not joyous every year for some. So we're trying to tackle those challenges, trying to give tools, trying to share the fact that you're not alone with your challenges. I think all of us, we can safely say that all of us have had challenges this year, regardless of where we are, who we are, and we're trying to share that. We're trying to talk about it, trying to progress with that. Definitely not pretend that everything is okay.
Yeah.
And we had, I think, the previous two topics were a bit darker, or at least ended on a semi-dark topic. I think we want to talk about the tips of happiness, how even in this challenging time, when we're separated, some of us lost our jobs, some of us are isolated, obviously physical health is also a risk. How can we still find a silver lining? Are there things that you're doing yourself, David, or things that you heard about around you with social interactions? What can you help us with to be a bit more joyous in this challenging time?
Yeah, that's a $64,000 question, isn't it? Happiness is a complex thing. Is it all about my happiness, or is it about our happiness, or is it about the wider community happiness? I remember developing a person spec and a job profile for somebody to work in the Methodist Church in London, and it was to help young people was the aim. And so I said to one of the young black guys, come and be part of this panel and help us form this person spec. And he was a lovely, lovely guy. And he said, well, in the job description, why can't we put that actually what we're trying to do is to improve the happiness of the young adults in Edmonton in North London? And you thought, he hit the nail on the head. That's exactly what we were trying to do. So I've tried to take that learning from that young man with me wherever I go, that why can't we try and improve the happiness rather than my happiness? Because I'm okay. I'm in a comfortable house. I've got a job. I've got a limited income. I've got a family. So I'm really blessed, whether you take that as a religious word or not a religious word. I'm fortunate. But then just going back a year or so, because happiness doesn't happen just like that for many people. And me and a group called Citizens UK in Birmingham, they're well known in America, so some of your bands will know them in their colleges. We challenged and encouraged the West Midlands Regional Mayor, Andy Street, to use all the powers he could to enable homeless men and women who were in horrible, horrible, horrible times 10 crummy bed and breakfast places with extortionate fees. And why couldn't there be somewhere nice and pleasant and safe? And so one story around, we'll call the lady Mary, she'd got several children in a really crummy one-bedroom bedsit with no breakfast in the B&B and no kitchen. She had to use a toilet with lots and lots of other people. And this is Birmingham, in the middle of the West Midlands. And so it's just like, wow. And so we challenged him, and there was me, a rabbi, a Catholic lady, a trade union person, a housing association person, a Christian person, a Muslim person, all standing together saying, we want this to happen. Well, things don't just happen like that. So for 12 months, we persevered with the local media in Birmingham, rattling the door to say, change must happen, change must happen, change must happen. And we heard just a week or 10 days ago that many, many homeless people will now be put into really nice hotels over the winter period, and hopefully, God willing, they'll be able to stay in those hotels until jobs and well-being and healthcare and education, and their income imbalances can be sorted out, and they'll be helped to find somewhere in a community with a place of their own. Now, for me, that's great happiness. For them, it will be profound happiness that they're not in rooms with damp black marks coming down the walls with water, or sharing a toilet with 20 other people that they don't know, and not being able to turn a kettle on safely. But then there'll be other people observing that'll be profoundly unhappy because of that. And I often look at my own community, that just because I wear this clerical collar, I'm a Methodist Church minister, it doesn't mean that all people of faith or Christian faith agree with what I do or why I do these things. But actually, I always encourage them politely to critically engage with what is it at the heart of our belief system. And it is love your neighbor. Love your neighbor can look like lots of different things. For homeless people, it looks like somewhere to live safely. For hungry people, it looks like food to fill their bellies. For people that are housebound or shut in, as my Jamaican and Caribbean friends say, it looks like somebody going to visit them. So again, it's not compartmentalizing those things that we see in society, but trying to engage critically with where those compartments are and say, how can we as wider community, in a non-partisan way, challenge the system, whether that's a governmental system with policy or a local authority system, again, with procedure. And again, also, in COVID, we're seeing like thousands of people lose their jobs. City and government officers losing the monies from tax, so everywhere is being squeezed financially and emotionally. But actually, if we do things together, we can spread the love a little bit more.
On a global level, as you said, I think happiness obviously can be divided into many different types and where to find them. But on the global level, I can definitely relate to what you just said. I found joy and hope in the fact that the pandemic challenged all of us. And because of that challenge, people join hands to some extent. I've found great hope in the Black Lives Matter movement that started in the US, made it to the UK. I've seen the marches bring people of all different ages, of all different stories, different colors. So I think some people expected Black Lives Matter to only be people of the darker skin to march there. But no, you had people of all stories that just said, we need to change that. The pandemic also forced the government to show some caring. Obviously, that's a wider discussion. But after we were raised to believe that the government cannot help us, and it's an open market, and you cannot really get anything, all of a sudden, the furlough scheme came in many countries. So I understand that many lost their jobs, but also the government showed us they can actually be there for us to some extent, maybe even more. People battle for so many topics, and we appreciate the NHS as well, finally, again, not to the extent that I would like to appreciate them and monetize that, but still, we remember the kind of the simple joys, the hope, the society as one spread, and not just me, that I felt was rising before that. So on a global level, I did find those great acts of communities rising up together, demanding stuff together, even if they didn't get what they wanted. Let's not forget the protest of the students a few months ago. So a lot of communities came together, whether it's just a community or communities around them, to show support. So we were there for one another to some extent. Obviously, it's a beginning. We have loads to do, and we're definitely not at a great place after the pandemic is over, but I saw that hope in there. If we're going towards the personal side, I want to talk of the joys that I found in just the simple things. I used to love going to pubs, to the cinema. You know me, I love going to concerts, to music shows that obviously were not here since the end of February, I believe.
Yeah.
I miss them dearly.
Yeah.
But I found joy in doing simple things like going to the park. We started cycling more often when allowed. obviously socially distancing, so just our household. We enjoyed some remote things, whether it's computer games. We even had one night of remote through Zoom. We had an escape room night. Um, I baked a lot, but I found those tiny things that sometimes they even cost me money. And I would really like to remember that once all those things are open. So yes, I would still love
Yeah.
to go to a concert or the cinema, meet more friends without being scared. But I would also wish myself and many around me to just enjoy those basic things that don't cost you money, and you can just find them just by walking out your door, walking out of your kind of comfort zone of the city, just going to a park, going outside to a small farm, enjoying those small things. I'm guessing you're going to add more on the family side, but I think all those simple things that you cannot find on Amazon were great, and I think many of us started reappreciating them during those hard times.
We did. However, you've gathered by now that that my cup is often half full and overflowing with optimism. But to go back to that word reality that we used earlier, in Birmingham, in a particular part of Birmingham called Lozells, it's a tightly packed Victorian building streets, red brick houses with narrow roads and few trees. And people have to live there. And mostly it's Black and Asian minority ethnic groups that live there because they have to live there because their income level is just there rather than being here where they could live somewhere more with wide roads. Some of the press, some of the social media was blaming them, and actually many of them are bus drivers, are ambulance drivers, are medics in hospitals, are carers, and they were being blamed for COVID, for spreading COVID. And I mean, clearly that is not true. So I had the possibility to speak in a loud way on their behalf with their authentic story, with some opinion formers in the wider West Midlands. And a businessman heard what I said and said he rang in to the programme and said, I just hear what you say about Lozells and how magnificent these people are. And he said, after the show, tomorrow, I'm going to give you 1,000 bottles of hand sanitizer when you couldn't get hand sanitizer. You know, in the old days, pre-COVID, hand sanitizer might be £1 a bottle. In COVID, it jumped to being £3 a bottle, and you couldn't even get it, even if you'd got £3. And so to be given 1,000 bottles of hand sanitizer as a gift was like, wow. So the next day I drove it to Lozells and gave it to a Muslim friend of mine for him to disseminate to whoever he wished. And in that area, there's an old building. It's called a convent where Sisters of Mercy live and help this immigrant community. And I gave them some as well. So if we're fortunate people, let's share our fortunate position and let's use the platforms that are presented to us to speak the realities of other people rather than the reality of ourselves or oneself. And we can do that more. You know, we can. You know, we're doing it today. We're doing it now in this conversation. And somebody listening might say, "Well, wow, I could do that myself as well." And a good friend of mine years ago, he used to say quite often, "If not you, who?" Implying if you don't do these things to try and help other people, who will do these things?
As we said before,
I rest my case.
yeah, sometimes it starts with just you doing one action, and others will see it or just get more strength to do more. You touched on the kind of the political discussion that kind of went back and forth of who's to blame, which was a really nasty side of the pandemic in the UK. But I did enjoy the fact that people rose up and said, enough, don't blame me, find a solution. It doesn't, first of all, I don't believe in what you just said, but even if it is true, which it's not the time. Let's focus on how to get us out of there. And people reminded our leaders that we have the power as well. and they stuck by each other. And we saw that caring and standing up by people that have nothing to do with them just because they were wronged. Same with celebrating people around the NHS, all the frontliners that we were reminded they're there, all those kind of shadow workers, all those silent people around us that do so much greatness around us day to day, and especially put their lives at risk during Corona, whether it's the bus drivers, the cleaners, all the people that served us that we were scared at home, but they were still going to work scared as well, putting themselves at risk. And to some extent, we celebrated them and were there for them, but it's obviously just the beginning. I also saw people that were free all of a sudden to do stuff and they were healthy, so they offered others that were not healthy or at greater risk to do the shoppings for them. Just small acts of kindness. And as you said, if not you, who? Simple things like that that we can still do. Unfortunately, we're still at risk. Tier 4, Tier 3, people at risk, regardless of what tier they are, we can still help them. We can still show kindness. We can still try and improve the world around us, regardless of what our story, of what our beliefs are, where we're from, what even language we speak. Even if you speak no language or your neighbor speaks not your language, you can still offer to help through our technology, through pictures, through this, giving them what you can. And it will make our world a better place, and will probably help fight off Corona or any other evils around us.
Yes. Yeah.
So
yeah.
I hope that this segment brought a bit more joy, whether it's giving us tips, giving us tools, showing us the silver lining in our really weird cloud recently. So, as I said, David, thank you very much for sharing those tools and those stories with us, Brighton, our very interesting and challenging holiday time. This is a very interesting and challenging holiday special on Rhino Radio. We're going to try and rest for a few seconds with a joyous rock Christmas holiday tune, and then we'll come back and talk more about how we're experiencing this holiday season. Thank you, David. Thank you for our listeners. Happy holiday if you're leaving us, but stay tuned. We got a few more.
Thank you.